cameras with the NSA.
There is something real here.
Did you believe that our government is in possession of UAPs?
Absolutely, based on interviewing over 40 witnesses over 4 years.
And where?
I know the exact locations, and those locations were provided to the Inspector General and some of which to the intelligence committees. I actually had the people with the first-hand knowledge provide a protected disclosure to the Inspector General. Biologics came to some of these recoveries.
Those could represent exquisite new adversary technology.
Non-human, and that was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the program I talked to that are currently still in the program.
The government is covering up some level of its knowledge and understanding about what some of those things are.
The Soul Foundation, which just announced a new initiative for UFO research and policy.
It's nuts, man. I mean, we're just small-town buds who saw a UFO in the woods. I mean, now we're hanging out with the government.
Wow. What floor were you guys on?
Good evening, everybody. This is Miles Lewis. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to another live edition of Anomaly Now, straight out of Austin, Texas. This is the weekly live news roundup show for the 501c3 nonprofit Anomaly Archives Scientific Anomaly Institute. And thank you for joining us on this Wednesday, June 19th. Happy Juneteenth, 2024. You'd think humanity would be completely free and we'd be living in a utopia. Let's keep trying. Well, folks, I have had a very enjoyable day. It is sprinkling here. It's been sprinkling on and off all day. But before it started, I did get to go with my wife to Barton Springs and jump in the cold waters there and enjoy an overcast swim here in Austin, Texas. And just been enjoying a relaxed day. Got to go to local bookstore, book people, use a really, really old gift card. Finally, after all these years, it was given to me so long ago, and got booked by Linda Godfrey. I Know What I Saw, about cryptids and urban folklore about monsters. But we'll talk about that maybe some other time. So thank you for joining us. We are so excited to be here today, and I want to draw everyone's attention. We need your support. We have launched our new Patreon community, our new Patreon fundraiser campaign, and basically we have details over at the website anomalyarchives.org, and there is a button on the side there marked Patreon, or you can just look around and you'll see that we are now hosting, starting this June, later this month, Saturday, June 29th, is the launch of the first of these new monthly online lectures. This first lecture is going to feature Brent, Raynes, who has been publishing and seeking in the field of UFOs, psychic, and the paranormal for many, many years. A lifetime of experience. That's the talk. A lifetime of exploring the UFO mystery and its psychic components. And then in July, we'll be having Professor WHAM give a talk titled Yet to Be Determined. And then in August, Joshua Cutchin. And then it'll just keep going after that with a lot of other great presentations lining up for our Patreon members of the Anomaly Academy level or higher. That's $10 a month. That gets you access to that live event, that live lecture, or Q&A at the end. And then, of course, you can always go back and rewatch it later, and you'll have access to all the other lectures that we've had on a monthly basis now. Of course, we're just starting this out, so there aren't any in the queue yet. But, of course, almost every past lecture we've ever done has been made available online at our YouTube channel, where you can go youtube.com/Anomaly Archives. You're probably watching the show live there if you're there. So we really could use your help if you'll consider joining at any level, but it's at the $10 a month level, the Anomaly Academy level, that will get you access to that. And like I said, you can find all the information on that over at anomalyarchives.org or at our Patreon. That's patreon.com/anomalyarchives. And you can see we've got a variety of different levels there, including $1 a month, $2 a month, $5 a month. And like I said, though, it's the Anomaly Academy Cadet level of $10 a month that gets you access to that. We don't yet have a whole lot of other perks and benefits, but we've got a lot of things that we want to roll out as we get all this underway. So We hope you'll consider joining us. And really, even if you can't donate any monetarily, you can join for free and you can get updates on everything that we post to the Patreon. All right, enough of that. So, of course, you can go to our Flipboard where we've got all kinds of articles. There are a variety of things that I'm not going to get to tonight. I think it's been the anniversary of the Houston Batman. For those who aren't familiar with that cryptid, it's a very interesting cryptid from way back in the day in Houston, Texas, that involved a winged beastie. We've got the link there to ABC13.com. It's a flashback to news that they did on that back in 2018. It features our good friend Kevin Gerard, who gives a lot of great lectures and does great work in the field of cryptozoology. And then there's this popular mechanics news. A radical new magnet without rare earth metals is about to change motors forever. And how did they discover this? Or how did they create it? Well, they used AI. And a very interesting article about just how much we can look forward to innovations that are the result of us feeding information into these AI and them helping us come up with some new ideas. Meanwhile, are animals conscious? Some scientists now think they are over at BBC News. Good old Isaac Coy, mysterious figure that he is, continues to upload digitized materials of a UFO and paranormal bent, but also creating AI chatbots. In this case, a new one that he has not made public, I believe, called Jacques, that he fed with all of Jacques Vallée's books, public lectures, and so forth. Very interesting development. Also, Austin-based Sacred Cow Productions that, like so many, got its start in Austin Access Community Television, ACTV, back in the day. He has just finally, after all these years, launched his YouTube channel. And a lot of rare, interesting odds and ends are up there, including several videos of Bill Hicks. So if you're a Bill Hicks fan, say to Bill, what kind of jokes would he be doing now? Well, anyway, you can go check that out over there. And this one from space.com, the sun's magnetic field is about to flip. Here's what to expect. Other good news, Voyager 1 is back online. NASA's most distant spacecraft returns data from all 4 instruments. This is great news. And there's a ton of other stuff that you can go check out at the Flipboard. But I'm going to dive into some of the specific articles that I wanted to focus on. Now, this one isn't an article, and unfortunately, this is one of those, gosh darn it, I really wish I'd known about this. But this past Saturday, here in Austin, Texas, was a local Sol Foundation event of some sort. I'm not really sure what the nature of it was, but a good friend of ours, Daniel Allen Jones, brought it to our attention and managed to get into the event. It was a private event held downtown in the Omni Hotel. There's 2 Omnis in Austin, but there's one downtown. And inside and up top of this facility is a business called the Capital Factory. And I strongly suspect this is a fundraising effort and an attempt to spread Sol Foundation's influence to other universities, other towns with grad students to help do research. But this was this past Saturday, June 15th, UAP Talk, Stanford's Sol Foundation. Invitation only, though Daniel was able to request access and got access, and we'll show some photos of his in just a second. But this, of course, features the founders, Professors Gary Nolan and Peter Scoffish, as well as special guest Hal Puthoff, Austin's own Hal Puthoff, who should be no stranger to any of y'all if you're watching this. But if you're a newbie, boy, you've got so much territory to explore if you are not familiar with Hal Puthoff. Puthoff is well known for everything from ZPE, zero-point energy research, to most famously perhaps his work in the secret and public research into psychic remote viewing that he did at Stanford Research Institute, where also Jacques Vallée helped with that as well. And there was a public component of that, but there was only revealed in the, I believe, early 1990s, revealed the secret side of this, where it was in fact being funded by the intelligence community for potential espionage purposes. Very interesting story there. Meanwhile, Gary Nolan, as it says here, is a distinguished immunologist and a professor at Stanford University, and known for pioneering developments in scientific technology and research on immunology in the brain. His credibility extends into various interdisciplinary studies, including his research into the field of UFOs. There's a little bio on Alf Putoff, and then Peter Scoffish, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, is an anthropologist known for his interdisciplinary approach to social and cultural phenomena. His work often intersects the fields of anthropology, philosophy, and history. So I'm still very excited about the development with regards to the Saul Foundation out at Stanford, and just the fact that they were here in Austin, which has this reputation of being a very tech-oriented, innovation-oriented town, but obviously has a significant alternative university environment. So, well, what happened there? Well, here are some of our good friend Daniel Allen Jones's photos that he posted publicly on his Facebook account. Let's get those. There you go. Thank you, Victor. Yeah, this one here, like I said, is a Capital Factory. You've got Hal over here on the left, Gary Nolan there, left to center, and I'm guessing that's Peter Scoffish right there in the blue suit. And the gentleman on the right looks really familiar, but I cannot think of his name. But there's this other, there's Daniel with Hal Putoff. Looking in the background, I don't immediately recognize any of these folks, so I think it was a very closed special engagement. And here's one of the only things that we have to go on about what possibly was discussed here: our evolving understanding of unidentified aerial phenomena. Brought to you by Voltron, or above. Anyway, so yeah, very small event. Gosh, really hope something public comes out of this besides the online announcement about it. And there is Gary Nolan, Garry, Gary Nolan, and Daniel Allen Jones. Daniel is one of the most hardworking and most travelingest folks I know in Texas, who goes to so many different types of events across this great state, and very much have been intending to get him on to report on all these different events that he's often visiting and videotaping. So we'll see about that in the near future. But thank you, Daniel, for publicizing this. Meanwhile, in our last show, we talked about this crypto-terrestrial paper that came out from these researchers, Tim Lomas, Brendan Case, Michael P. Masters. The crypto-terrestrial hypothesis, a case for scientific openness to a concealed earthly explanation for UAP. That is still a very interesting paper. I've heard criticism and praise also, so both sides having opinions about it. No surprise there. But what is interesting is this paper is getting some mainstream publicity in the news. Fox7Austin.com ran this live interview with Nick Pope. Of course, he's the famous British UFO personality who, quote unquote, ran the British government's UFO project, which is such an inaccurate statement, but it gets repeated over and over, and it pretty much what feeds his ability to go on any program at any time if they need a quote unquote UFO expert. But the headline, "Aliens may be living among us disguised as humans," Harvard researchers claim. This is in reference to that crypto-terrestrial paper, and it's a decent discussion of this. But it really amounts to, as Nick explicates, and the paper says, that these are just a speculative thought piece. This is just a thought experiment, as some say. And I was reminded by another poster online that, in fact, this paper does reference Mac Tonnies, who was such a wonderful soul and left this plane of existence far too soon, many, many years ago. But he was the one who published, what was published posthumously was his still in development book called Crypto-Terrestrials, that was exploring these ideas. But again, as a thought experiment, not something that he was wedded to as the answer. But it's just nice, for me to see these kinds of hypotheses being explored. And as they're trying to say, just try to hold, scientists, please hold back your ridicule. Please keep an open mind. And, again, we're not saying that this is the answer, but it's worth looking into. Again, the PDF of that article you can find online at ResearchGate, and I'll try to include the link in there, but it's in last week's show notes in case I forget. Moving right along, more UFO news. Really, this is interesting to me, and even though it's the DailyMail.com or .co.uk, The headline, Pentagon official reveals tantalizing 7-minute encounter with blue UFO, which emitted enough energy to power a small city. So I first heard about this probably in late 2015. The sighting actually happened in 2013, but I don't think it was publicized very quickly. But within a year or so, it came to light. And it was 2016 when I had the opportunity to go to a local UFO meeting. Of course, I used to run the Austin MUFON chapter, but years later, there really hasn't been an Austin MUFON chapter in a long, long time. And somebody was trying to resurrect such a chapter, and they had gotten local UFO personality researcher Robert Powell, who at that time was the lead investigator for MUFON, Mutual UFO Network. And so he was giving a kind of a pre-presentation. He was about to go give the same presentation at the annual national symposium that MUFON puts on that was going to be like a top 5 UFO sightings from the past few years that he had investigated, or that MUFON had investigated. And among those sightings was this amazing green barbell Canadian UFO case. I'm going to go ahead and read it pretty heavily from this article. And there's so much bad editing online and in books these days. It just drives me nuts. But a U.S. Department of Defense contractor's tantalizing encounter with a giant glowing UFO has sparked 10 years of research and 2 patents inspired by his encounter. 3 witnesses, including that Pentagon engineer, report that they captured electronic evidence of a barbell UFO, half the length of a football field, that glowed an eerie indigo blue. That craft, they said, flew silently over an old logging road in southwestern Ontario, Canada on August 28th, 2013, near where the trio had camped hunting trip. DailyMail.com spoke with the case's first investigators, that would be Robert Powell and Paul Leach, is that his name, who shared electronic data from the contractor's attempt to film the object, showing quote-unquote white noise pulses in the video recur in 1-second loops identical to strobe light from the UFO itself. There's a lot of photographs that accompany this, and there's some video that we'll be linking to where you can dive more into this case if you find it interesting. Quote, the captured data of the UFO event, the witness reported, may be the first real physical proof of not just a craft flying, but that flies by virtue of an incredibly complex and powerful spinning electromagnetic system. The case was investigated by the same nanotechnology expert, Robert Powell, whose analysis of a 2007 mass UFO sighting in Texas, the Stephenville Encounters, became a centerpiece of the Steven Spielberg-produced UFO series Encounters last year on Netflix. And if you haven't watched that Steven Spielberg series, I do actually highly recommend it. I thought it was a very well-produced series of episodes. The article goes on, quote, is there another barbell case where you've investigated like this? That engineer, UFO investigator Robert Powell, told Daily Mail of this rare case. No, it's the only one. Powell told Daily Mail that UFO cases with this shape are so rare that only about 50 to 60 cases exist throughout history. Powell, whose new book on UFOs garnered praise from former Defense Department intelligence official Chris personally visited the contractor's lab and worked with him on analyzing the eerie interference on his UFO video. He gave it for the defense facility, Powell said, who vetted the source's identity and biographical claims. There was a heavy-duty commercial 3D printer in the lab, and there were offices with 3 or 5 engineers that worked beside him in that building. So basically, the story is basically involved these 3 or 4 hunters. They're hunting black bears in season legally, and the primary witness was in the back of this 4x4 pickup truck off this logging. I think they have, so here's the picture of the road and with the superimposition of the CGI CAD version of this craft done, I believe, by Powell or Leach. And he sees this object, this barbell, kind of flattened bells on the end, and it's in this eerie plasma glow, and it's slowly spinning. And as it seems to move around very slowly, but before it moves, these sparks emit, I guess, on the opposite side from the direction it then proceeds to travel. And he had he tried to record it with his phone, he tried to record it with a Handycam, and in both cases, the devices would not get out of their startup loop. At least that was how he described it, the witness. And the other people in the vehicle also witnessed this. though they were facing the other direction, and so they would have had to have craned around to look, and with more difficulty. So, yes, it goes on saying, quote, both the other witnesses were extremely worked up about this, the defense contractor said in a videotaped interview. In fact, one of them said, just shoot it, like he wanted me to actually shoot a rifle round into this thing, unquote. The UFO moved in its slow rotating motion for approximately 6 or 7 minutes, eventually allowing the defense contractor witness to film the event with a Sony HD camera. So eventually it did work, but not perfectly. No, there is no video footage of this object, which yielded only static despite working before and after the event. The sighting ended with a similar lit craft emerging on the horizon and both UFOs zipping off at an incredible speed. All that they had then was, all that they got on the video camera was visual static and the witnesses' astonished voices on the tape. So Powell flies up to meet the guy, sees the guy's facility, attaches these oscilloscopes to the camera to try to get some data from this. And this is somewhere there's interesting data here, but basically, yeah, they showed this weird pulse that this defense contractor is now claiming he has used his kind of reverse engineering of this to somehow get a couple of patents. Now, I don't go into any of that detail, obviously, but very, very interesting. They have screenshots of the instrumented portion of this research effort, which again I'd seen before. So back in 2016, this image here is from a video that was produced by our friend Daniel Allen Jones, and he was at this event, and we both got to see Robert give his explication of this case and then some other cases, all of which were interesting. But of course, this case seemed really, really interesting and unique for a number of different reasons. But as it turned out, the Pentagon contractor became aware of the video and certain footage from the talk being in the video and asked it to be taken down. So you cannot view that video online anymore, not officially. I'm just saying there are copies floating around. But the article does link to this video, which features interviews with at least one or two of the witnesses, though their faces are obscured and their voices are changed. The defense contractor, has basically refused to provide any to go public with their identity for the simple, obvious reason of being concerned that they might lose some of their contracts with the Defense Department. So based on to continue the article, based on the defense contractor's own experience producing plasmas at a much smaller scale than the indigo plasma that he said enveloped the giant craft, he was able to calculate a ballpark figure for the energy required to produce this field, which he suspects is the UFO's propulsion system. Calculated that the craft had an approximate surface area of 3.1 million square inches, as he wrote to Powell and Leach. A minimum of 160 million watts of power would be needed to surround the craft in plasma. This amount of power is 33% of the 478 million watt nuclear power plant in Fort Calhoun, Nebraska, but packed into an object a fraction of that size. So, like I said, that I have seen video of this, and there are other articles about this online from years ago that show clips from the videos that Powell showed at that lecture in 2016 that feature them doing the experiments to glean something from the video, the staticky video that they did record during the sighting. And I'm going to put a link to this because Mutual UFO Network still has that video up online, and basically it shows the process that they went through.
Okay, so here I have a TX1 plugged in with an analog HDV component cable. So going into each of the respective channels here on the digital oscilloscope, and I just have it in real-time mode at the moment. As you can see, anytime you have video playing, see the changes in the back.
Anyway, this goes on for, it's like, 6 minutes. It's probably very boring to most folks, and the folks just listening will have no idea what we're talking about. But I'll put the links to these videos. Hopefully they'll stay online. This is still over at the Mutual UFO Network's YouTube channel. from circa 7 years ago, November of 2016. So anyway, it's a very fascinating case. I don't know how much it's been talked about out there, but there you go. I recommend you check it out. It's very interesting. Shifting gears, very happy to see this article over at pbs.org. Sensing Sasquatch Art exhibition offers new way of thinking about the mythical creature. This is from June 14th and the PBS NewsHour. It's about a 6.5 minute video that's excellent. And I would so love to go see this exhibit. It's going to be up for quite some time. I think into 2025, they say, but it's really, so they have this art exhibit that explores Bigfoot, Sasquatch, but it's largely through the eyes and art of indigenous peoples. And the museum worked directly with these indigenous helpers and artists to create this installation. I really think you should give it a little whirl. Go check it out. There's a wide variety of art there.
Phil Kashkash, an artist and linguistics anthropology scholar who is Cayuse and Nez Perce, helped curate the exhibition called Sensing Sasquatch. Through art and multi-sensory experiences, the deep connection between Sasquatch and native people of the region and beyond is revealed.
Through our experience, we do know and understand it to be a revered being who essentially watches over our community, is a kind of protector. And that kind of information is not widely known.
Outside the exhibit, visitors are asked to leave their preconceptions behind. Inside, they learn Sasquatch, which comes from the word Saskats, from the Coast Salish First Nations people, has many names.
Being a scholar of language, I was able to develop a data set of about 16 names from the various communities throughout the Northwest. Our language in Nez Perce, we say Istiaha, and that is reference to this particular being we know as Sasquatch.
So yeah, that's over at pbs.org. Highly recommend it. And a wrap up tonight, I'm pretty sure we've covered this before. The monoliths, these big silver monoliths that have been appearing for the last 4 years around the planet. And obviously these are art installations by various guerrilla artists. If you want to attribute this to aliens or some other force, there doesn't seem to be anything going on here other than an attempt to call attention to space, out the outdoors, strange juxtapositions of science fiction elements and nature. The Washington Post has this new article, though it's behind a paywall, but you can read it over at msn.com. Remember the mysterious monoliths? A new one just appeared near Las Vegas. This was posted a day ago, and it goes into the history for the last several years about these mysterious monoliths, and starting with the one in Utah in 2020 and others that have appeared around the world. And yes, as I think one of our, I think it was Dr. Greg Little was on the program 4 years ago. And when I was like, oh, they don't know who did it. He was like, oh no, they've got video. And I think this is, this is the Utah State workers near the Utah one in 2020. But anyway, so no mystery here really, other than who keeps wanting it out there. And I must have reported on this before, but this of course rang all kinds of bells for me because I do want to honor the memory of Caleb Shaver. I didn't know him very well, but in the early 2000s, he started attending the local MUFON chapter meetings and didn't ever get to know him very well, but he was always a very nice gentleman. And he even wrote up one of the meetings for the newsletter. And he committed suicide in 2009. But interestingly enough, he became the spokesperson for the guerrilla art group that put up the Seattle monolith in 2001. From the Wikipedia entry on New Year's Day 2001, a replica of the monolith from 2001, a Space Odyssey appeared on Kite Hill in Seattle's Magnuson Park. The Seattle monolith was a guerrilla art installation by a group of Seattle artists calling themselves Some People. Caleb was a military journalist. He was a Burning Man worker, and I put together a little page for him on the website with some background about all of this. There's some flashbacks to 2010, people writing about the Seattle monolith in hindsight, and then this article from Daily Mail, Trouble in Hipster Paradise, how the toxic work environment behind the scenes of Burning Man is being blamed for the suicides of 7 workers at the annual Counterculture Festival. I really was not aware of this, but this was his name being mentioned in a number of articles about people succumbing to mental health problems. And just wish I'd gotten the chance to know him better. But this also reminds me of something even further back, because before that 2001 Seattle monolith was another one. Well, something more akin to what we're seeing now, and not really a monolith, but back in the fall of 1998 with issue 7 of my Elf-Infested Spaces zine, Journal of Possible Paradigms, we always had a section called Cargo Culture where I would put a lot of stuff on alien, UFO, pop art, that kind of thing. But at some point I had been working at the public library, and so I would process all the magazines there and the periodicals, including the Art in America magazine. And I remember one issue that once it was pulled from circulation at the library, I took home with me because I was like, I've got to keep this. Minimalist alienist sculptural artist John McCracken interviewed. And what this refers to is this. It was this. I don't know if you can see that very well. Let's go there. There's a reproduction scan of the Art in America magazine that I'm talking about that I took home, and which featured this man's art, John McCracken. And in it also were a picture of him, UFO crash test site, 1947. Yeah, it's near the Little Inn. And these monolith-like objects that he did that often had highly reflective surfaces. And so I had reproduced this interview with him called Between Two Worlds. One of the founders of West Coast minimalism, John McCracken, has long been acclaimed for his flawlessly crafted geometric sculptures. The artist now speaks openly of the link between his work and paranormal phenomena. So, yeah, and I have seen a few people referencing McCracken's work in relation to these silver monoliths that are obviously not the exact proportions of the monolith from 2001, but rather, they're tall and slender. Anyway, I'll put the link to this interview and references to these previous monolith artist creators in the show notes for tonight's episode. Well, that's going to be it. Thank you for joining me, folks. This has been Anomaly Now. And please, please, please consider joining our Patreon. We really need your help. Again, we're going to be doing live monthly online events. And if you're at the $10 a month level, you can get access to each month's new lecture, as well as the archive of past lectures and more perks to come. Good night.